But I hope everyone's doing well. I know I kind of this was a last minute announcement really, just because I've been really busy. Also, I know Nat's had a lot going on as well. So, yeah, we just kind of squeezed this in as and when we could do it. So, without further ado, just wanted to say hello and welcome to my Instagram channel. It's been a while since I've done a live actually on Instagram on any of the platforms that I have. So it's kind of nice to get back into the swing of things. And the idea behind this really is that I want to start doing frequent discussions about different aspects of spirituality, whether it's about, the topic of spirituality, tarot, other divination tools, the personal journey, the collective experience, etc., quantum physics, the whole spectrum. So it will be focused on different aspects of that, but I would say, the spiritual journey is like the broad umbrella term of all the things that I wish to discuss, right? Because that's what's relevant to the channel and what I'm really focused on at this time. So just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Demari. If you haven't come across my channel before, welcome. It's nice to see you here. Just to let you guys know, for those people who couldn't tune into the live session now, this will be going up obviously on YouTube. So if you're watching it now, thanks for watching it after the fact. Because yeah, I know that the time differences is a little bit tricky, especially because a number of you are in the US. So I know that a lot of you just kind of starting your day, depending on whereabouts in the US you are. And of course, my followers that are further afield as well. So I do get it. But I just wanted to really do this because I thought it'd be a great idea to start really looking at these discussions, getting other people involved who have obviously their own views, their own journey, and, really just have a chance to look at other people's experiences and get insights and, just information from people who are very much focused on their journey as well as assisting others as well. So I'm really excited to be doing this. So my first guest in this capacity is Nature's Galaxy, okay, otherwise known as Nat. She is awesome. She just came across me by chance, I think, and then as such I was able to look at her channel. Really great tarot reader. I'd love to have really go into her journey with it and how she uses tarot on a regular basis. But she's a fantastic reader. That kind of blew me away pretty much from the moment I came across one of her readings, the depth she goes into, also how she pertains it to the different aspects of, life in general, as well as like some of the deeper messages that she's able to pull. Really, really great tarot reader. So if you haven't seen her channel, I will link that in the description when this goes on YouTube. But I'll also be following her and doing a post afterwards. So if you're watching this on Instagram, and even with the live replay, you'll be able to get links to her channels in the post that I put on my feed, okay? So without further ado, I just want to get Nat on the live with us. Hopefully all will be well. Fingers crossed I won't have any connection issues like I have been. Hello, welcome.
How are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. I'm just going to quickly turn you up a little bit because I think my speaker's a bit quiet.
I'm a little bit of a quiet talker too. Sometimes I get loud, but most of the time I'm very comfortable with a tiny, meek voice.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I'm constantly thinking about projection because people always tell me, like, I cannot hear you. Like, if you have a question, speak up because I have no idea what the hell you just said. So I kind of got used to it as well. And especially because, like, my mom is partially deaf. So I used to be very, very quiet as a speaker as a child. So she was always screaming at me to speak louder because she couldn't hear a word I was saying. So I just kind of learned how to project a little bit just through that, really, just family life. But anyway, enough about that. It's nice to have you here. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much again. So much.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. Like I was saying just in the introduction, like honestly, when I came across your channel, I was really impressed, especially because, I've not been doing tarot for very long. I'm still quite new to it. It's something that I'm kind of really getting more to grips with, you know, and my own style of reading. So it's always inspiring for me when I come across someone else's channel and, you know, how they do their readings and just the kind of messages that they pull, because everyone has such a different style, you know. So there's just been certain key tarot readers that I've come across and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. Like it just resonates for me, you know. So yeah, it was yeah. So it was great to have you do this with me and just to discuss the subject really, because I thought, okay, I'm doing all these videos, but I really want to also have discussions about tarot and divination and spirituality itself, right? So I'm always really curious to get other people's insight as well as sharing, you know, my perspective on it. So to just begin with, you know, I want to kind of shut up for a bit and let you take the reins. So, yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for people who are just coming to meet you for the first time and how you got into your spiritual journey?
Okay. So as you said, my name is Natalie. I started doing tarot in early 2016. I've always been spiritual, but I did fall off the path quite a lot because I was so into what's going on here, and just knowing me, I'm always trying to have my hand in every other pot. So
Sure.
that drew me off the path, but of course, I already knew in my own way, you know what, you'll be fine, just keep going through it. And though, of course, I've gone through several traumatic incidences, I've always found my way coming back into spirituality. But I really put my wands down in 2016 because I believe it was on Facebook, somebody mentioned, it's Mercury retrograde. And in my head, I was just like, that makes so much sense. You know, the moon already pulls so many things from us. You know, of course, everything else in the universe would just, you know, play a hand in that as well. So the more and more I dug into it, I was just like, I feel home. And so in 2015, though I was getting into it, there were so many uproots that I just couldn't focus on anything. But when it came down to 2016, I finally got my first tarot deck. I could openly just read a whole bunch of literature and occult readings that I could because my family is Baptist. So when it comes down to them, of course, throughout the years, they're just like, okay, you are who you are, but we are who we are. And there was a meeting of minds. So when I come to different religions and different ways of thinking, I'm always just so broad. I'm just like, what else is there to learn? I want to just know more of this. I want to know more of this. Just hand it every pot.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing though. I think that's like such a healthy way to approach anything, just having an open mind and a real interest for it. It always is, it's got to start with curiosity and like a passion for learning more, right? Like that's what I feel is like the key component. And that's when everything becomes like, there's just this tipping point where you just go further and further down the rabbit hole and you're just like, what more can I discover? You know, it just becomes this whole new journey.
I want to
Yeah.
know more.
Yeah, exactly. But that's great. Like I love that as well because it was pretty similar for myself, you know, because like I think I got my first tarot deck when I moved to Spain, and that was in I think it was late 2015 when I got my first tarot deck. But I had no idea what I was doing. I just felt drawn to it, you know. I was in a spiritual shop and I was getting all my incense and, you know, and my eye just caught this particular deck and I was just like, I'm not sure which one to get. And my friend, who is just like an encyclopedia of knowledge, right? His name's Mike. He's my go-to guy because he's very read up on you know, anything to do with science, religion, spirituality, like everything, you know. He's that kind of guy. And he just looked at me and he was just like, which one calls to you? And I was like, I don't know. He was like, okay, which one caught your eye first? I was like, well, this one, but it was a deck that was like really far at the back. And but for some reason it caught my eye, and he was like, that's the one you've got to get then. So I picked up the deck and it happened to be the intuitive tarot. So yeah, I was like, okay, and we'll give that a go. I had no idea what I was doing. I took it home, I was trying to learn the meanings and stuff, but I didn't really do anything with it so much, just like trying to do a little bit of readings for myself. But I only started to look at it more seriously, I would say, spring last year, you
Really?
know. Yeah, that's when I started to think, okay, like I really should look at this because there was something about using the cards and when it came to watching readings online, I was very skeptical because I was like, yeah, but it's very, it's broad, it's general, there's no way of confirming if it's going to apply to myself. But my sister, actually, my little sister, she got really into watching tarot readings. And she was like, Brenda, you need to check this woman out. Like, she's unbelievable. And I was like, okay, I'm open-minded, so let's have a look. So I had a look at one reading she did, and my mind was blown. I couldn't get over the detail. I was just like, it was exactly my circumstances at the time. I was just like, how is that even possible? And then from there, I just that's when I was like, okay, I need to look at this in more detail. And that's when I became more and more fascinated with it and then actually started working with it more myself, right? So, yeah, so it's just kind of interesting how it started with like a vague curiosity and then it became something so much more so quickly, right?
Just opened up. But
Yeah,
I'm just so thankful that most of us also kind of came and attracted each other, because it wasn't long when I first came back to Twitter. And then I just stumbled into the community and everyone just fit in like a puzzle piece. And it was
yeah.
just so comforting that everyone could still come from so many walks of life, and then we could all just, throw our little stuff into the little pot so everyone can prosper and everyone can just thrive on their own. It's
Yeah.
been the best community.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like that's something that struck me really fast actually, was just how supportive everyone is. I know that there maybe has been some competition between some people, just from what I've heard with a couple of like, quite big tarot readers that I've watched on YouTube. They've had some, not so great stuff going on recently, just with a little bit of competition and stuff. But generally, it's very positive. Like everyone's so supportive of one another and encouraging, and
Just
it's
there.
like,
Sending
yeah,
energy. Just here you go. Here you go. Let's go. Let's do more stuff. Like, you want more
yeah,
things to be transferred here? Let's go.
yeah. I love that. That's like so. I feel like it's so unique about it as well because any other like community that I've operated in, especially because when I was primarily focusing on like marketing and especially social media marketing and for different businesses and stuff. A lot of industries are so cutthroat. There's no camaraderie, there's no collaboration in that way. It's only like strictly business. It's like, how can we like partner in a strictly business sense? Like what's going to work for me financially and it's going to work for you financially. But there's no just sense of wanting to improve, right, the community. I never really got a sense of that. There was always people fighting and just a real like clash of views, whereas everyone is so different in this community, and that's what everyone loves about it. You've got so many different characters, and it's like, everyone's just like, yeah, just go with what feels right to you, what you gravitate towards, it's fine. And just that support as well is like, it's just mind-blowing. It's one of the most beautiful things I've seen from an online community, especially.
It, I love it so much.
Yeah, for sure. So what else I wanted to talk about a little bit is in regards to your channel, because I know you've been doing some live streams on there. So how do you primarily work when it comes to your tarot readings? Because I know you do personal readings as well. So like, what do you find is the best way for you to approach it? Because I know that obviously you do a lot of like online readings for your channels, but do you focus more on the personal readings or are you more comfortable with the general readings?
To be honest, it's really hard to tell, because when it comes to the general reading, I have to use so much more of my imagination than
Mm.
someone sitting in front of me, and I can have like a direct line to that person where it's just like, this is what you need to know. And sometimes in the general reading that does happen, and I'm able to hit a chord, and I'm happy that it happens because I'm able to shift that perspective if they are going the wrong way. But overall, when it comes down to the general readings, I like to experiment with them, because I also found your channel because you always talked about shadow work, and no one truly talked about shadow work. And as those little mixed babies that we are, I'm just like, finally, someone else, finally. So when I found your channel, there was more of a shadow work lineup that then had a domino effect where more people started talking about it. And I was just like, oh, thank goodness. So when it came down to the general readings, I could use my shadow work and my imagination to counterbalance everything. But when it comes down to the one-on-one readings, they're so intimate, and sometimes I do get a little bit nervous and frustrated because I think it's more about how I'm presenting to other people, because it's just like, I don't know if I should hit the gas or if I should ease back a little bit, and it's so hard to tell because it's so delicate. Where the general reading, people feel like, you know what, I'm not the only one. I don't feel as though there's like this you mentality. There's only, you know, me. So there's a little bit more space there. But in the personal readings, I do like them, but then at the same time, it's really iffy because there are different domino effects that happen with people who, when they change their life, then other people are just like, oh, a psychic helped you out of this terrible situation. I don't like them. And then it becomes very personal. So in those situations, also psychic readers, I've noticed on YouTube and then going on to their own personal platforms, they would just be like, this terrible thing happened to me because they don't like the truth. And it does happen in our community. And though we don't talk about it so much, it's just one of the issues that I have when it comes down to personal readings. Though, of course, I'll still put myself right there, just being like, I don't care. Like, if you need help, I don't care. I'm right there. But it is such a backlash for people in the community because that does happen. So it's very hard to tell because the one-on-one readings are honorable. The general readings are just bigger. They're so much bigger.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, everything you're saying just makes perfect sense with my experience so far. Like, honestly, I've only done so many personal readings because, you know, I've only really branched into this very recently, right? In a more like serious way, as I said. But what I found so far doing the personal readings is, I'm very careful with the words I use, right, and how I express them, because I'm aware that whoever I'm sat with, or like, you know, I'd say over Skype or whatever, but whoever I'm communicating with directly is hanging on to every single word, right? So I have to be very mindful of the words I use and how I express that, so it's not taken in a way that's completely, you know, not in line with what I'm actually trying to communicate. And that's something I'm always like, you know, really mindful of, especially even with the general readings, because I know that people are quick to, when they hear something that sounds negative, straight away they're like, oh, it's always so negative. Why is this happening? Why, you know, and it's like they're missing the message, which is actually designed to help them, that's going to get them through a difficult cycle or whatever the situation is, right? So they completely miss the point because all they're hearing is something that sounds negative. So when I'm doing the, you know, a personal reading in particular, I'm very, very mindful of how I communicate that and make sure that the person's fully understood what I'm saying before I move on to the next part of the reading, right? Because it's just so easy to just, for that person not to get the message that's actually being conveyed. So that's something I totally get. And just, that little bit of, I get anxiety as well, you know, it's something that I have anyway. I get anxiety a lot in general, but when it comes to like a personal reading, I'm like, okay, let's be very clear on what is actually being said, you know, because the last thing I want is that person to go away thinking one thing when I meant another. So yeah, I do get that for sure. But my experience with general readings, it's like, there's so much that you're picking up on, you know, even if you tap into a specific group and it's a small group, there's still so much energy within that. So you're trying to decipher what is coming through and what is the most necessary message at that time. Sometimes there's something that's really pressing that just comes up and it just has to be said. So I'll just say it, even if it means the reading is longer or if people are confused because it wasn't their message. I just say, listen, that was for someone very specific or for a few people, right? So, you know, people are aware, but it's kind of, that's the thing. Sometimes people get upset as well because it wasn't their particular message. It's like, you know, but people have to understand there is so many people in the world, you know, you're only going to pick up on a certain group. at any one time. And there's no way for the reader to control who you're going to pick up on, right? So that's the other thing.
All the angels are behind you, just like, no, you have to say this, or it's your own spirit that's saying, no, you have to pull back on this. So it's so
Yeah.
difficult, like you said. But then at the same time, it's very challenging in a really positive way, because you
Yeah,
still get
definitely.
the opportunity to change people's perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, like I don't feel like I'm afraid to challenge that either as well, you know, because like, you know, as you were saying about the shadow work, because that's been a very integral part of my journey. I knew that was something that was going to be at the forefront of my readings, you know. I think that's primarily what I'm geared around, is that yes, of course it involves light work, you know, because that's the whole point, you know, that's the end game. But my kind of focus is shadow work, you know, getting through the nitty gritty and facing it head on objectively in order to get to where you need to be. So that was very clear to me, that had to be the primary focus of especially my channels, my general readings. When it comes to personal readings, it's a different thing. It depends on what the person needs at the time, right? But for that specifically, yeah, I really wanted to get into the nitty gritty because I felt like that was something that was kind of lacking a little bit in the community. Like there's a lot of great readers that do fantastic love readings, stuff to do with career, generally getting into alignment, you know, light work, things like that. But I felt like when it came to shadow work, there wasn't really too much going on. You know, there are people that do some great, create some great content around the concept of shadow work. You know, I've seen amazing posts, you know, on social media about it, but not so much in terms of general readings, right? So that's why I kind of really wanted to focus on that, because I feel like that would be of great benefit to many people, you know, those who feel they're ready to receive the messages. Right, because I know that obviously not everyone's going to be like willing or ready to hear it, but maybe sometime down the line when they are, it might pop up, you know, because you know how the universe works, you know, it will bring that message when you need it, as and when you need it, whether or not you came across it ever in your life. So, you know, that's the, that's the thing.
Just like, oh, you remember that one time you forgot? Oh, here's this memory again. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, thanks, thank you, universe.
So that's the thing, like that's what I love about it as well, because that's why, as much as like, okay, it might be timestamped or whatever, I know that that message is going to come up for that person when they need it, so I don't worry too much about it, you know. And I say to people generally, like, you know, if it's not your message, that's fine, but maybe possibly later down the line it will be, who knows. There's no way to really put a time on it as such, so take it or leave it, you know, as it applies. But yeah, and that's the thing. That's what I really love as well, talking about, like, you know, synchronicity and messages coming through and stuff. Like, it must have been complete by chance that you came across my channel, because I'm not active on Twitter. That was like one of the few posts I put up in I don't even know how long, and it was literally when I was going through another Dark Night of the Soul episode, you know. Yeah, you remember, yeah, I was literally like in a really, excuse my language, but I was in a fucked up way, like, honestly. I had just like got robbed. I was in a place that I didn't feel comfortable with. It wasn't safe. I knew I was being watched when I was coming back and forth from work. I was not enjoying my work. You know, I was kind of navigating a difficult situation where I was still healing from a previous connection, things like that. There was a lot of stuff going on, right? So it was just like, you know, bombardment, one thing after another after another. And I was just like, okay, time to put the work into practice, you know. It's like, it was necessary. As messed up as it was necessary. But I was like, okay, let's see, you know, how I can navigate through this and get to the other side, because I know that this isn't, you know, the end. It's just a difficult situation. But it was just amazing how at that particular moment, that's when, you know, I met someone new. That's where I made a really powerful connection at work, someone who's very much about, you know, spiritual alignment, and she's getting into life coaching around that subject. So that was really great. And then just, yeah, being able to meet you when you just reached out to me and you know, put a post about my experience and just offering support. Like, you didn't know me from Adam, but the fact that, you know, you did that, like, really struck a chord with me. I was like, wow, like, this is a special person. You know, that's not something I no, but it's true. Like I'm being genuine. Like, you know, it's not every day you get that even from people you've known, right? I had people who knew me that saw the post, like saw my posts about it, and didn't even say anything, right? People that I've known for years. And yet here is this lovely stranger who's like, you know, just putting out their support, asking me how I am and stuff. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, you know, I felt so grateful for that. You know, something so small meant so much, you know, and that's why I knew, okay, this is someone I need to connect with. You know, this is not someone I want to lose off my radar. Because, yeah, I'm of the mindset where, you know, if you were in a situation where you needed to talk to someone, even if it wasn't as bad as that and you just needed to like just get something off your mind or whatever, I like to think that I'm the person that would be that you can always like talk to, or we can discuss ideas, or we can partner in some way or whatever, you know, like whatever is needed, I'm there pretty much. So when I actually received that from someone before I even get a chance to do that, that's like, wow, like that's a big deal for me, you know.
I'm
So
happy
yeah.
that I brought you some peace and the good vibes and stuff. It's what I would do with my friends, so it's just like, of course, let me just give it to everybody and just here you go, here you go, here you go.
Yeah, but that says a lot about you as a person, you know, and I feel like that comes through in your readings as well. Like your personality is very much there, you know, and that's like such an integral part as, you know, as a tarot reader, you know, you need to be able to inject your personality. It needs to feel authentic. It has to be authentic, right? It's no good because don't get me wrong, there's some great channels, but I really don't resonate with the ones where it's like just a show and a dance and it feels like very contrived. You know, it just doesn't work for me because I feel like in order to truly connect with the message, I need to connect with the person also, right, on some level. So that's why, you know, when I did get to watch some of your readings, then, you know, okay, I'm not going to lie, I mostly focused on the Cancer ones, being a Cancer sun and rising sign. So, you know,
Not afraid of anything. Not afraid of anything.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I did focus on those ones a little bit more. But yeah, generally, when I looked at your videos, I was really, really impressed with how just like, it just felt like I was, you know, you're in your like bedroom or your living room, just chilling out with you, having a conversation, very heart to heart kind of conversation. And it just felt so personable and just like, just very warm, you know, very like just helpful and friendly and positive, but yeah, very warm. So I really love that about your readings. And I think that is because that's your character, that's your personality, you know, that really comes through what you do. So that's why I really wanted to, yeah, just put you out there pretty much, pretty much on my little platform. But yeah, like seriously, it's amazing what you do. And I think definitely people need to see it. Even more people need to see it. I know people obviously gravitate to your channels, but more people need to see it. So that's the thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is just going to be a consistent funnel where it's just like, no, here's just all the things that you need. Just keep it right over there.
Yeah, but that's the thing, you know, for me it's all about the connection. So yeah, it's always a pleasure when I get to meet someone of like mind, you know, and just be able to talk openly about these things as well, because often I don't doubt this is the same for you, but generally this is the kind of thing that I bring up in the conversation with people I know, and often they'll ask for my input or my insights or whatever, because it's not something they've really focused on so much, right? So it's kind of like a new world or a new subject for them, which is cool, and that's fine. I'm happy to do that. But sometimes it's just nice to speak to someone who has some input, right? And that can offer something that challenges my perspective, you know? So it's always amazing when I get to meet new people and have that opportunity to do that.
I'm just, thank you so much. I'm just nervous. I'm sorry. There's a
No,
lot of
you don't have to be nervous.
appreciation, so I'm just like, I don't know what to say.
Sorry if I'm just like bombarding you with the energies and the feels and the love, you know.
All
But
the feels, all the feels.
I'm sorry, I'm Cancer. I can't help it. It's just what we do.
It's okay.
But
I have a Cancer Mars, so it's just like I'll focus on one area and then like I'm just like, okay, I got through. All right, here's more love. Here's more love. Good enough. Good
Yeah.
enough.
I was going to ask you about that as well, actually, because I know that, you do tie in astrology with it as well in some ways. So how did you get into the astrology side of things?
So in 2016, when I was dabbling into all of it, when I was coming across astrology, people were always just like, there's no such thing as cusp. And then at that time, I also received a book from my boyfriend. He loves gifting me a whole bunch of journals and books because I'm always writing, I'm always trying to learn more. So when he gave me the book, I opened it up and I'm just like, yes, they're cusp. But the more and more like I ask around, people are just, well, no, this is it. No, this is it. And even online, it was just so definitive where I was just like, okay, something's up. But around that time, I also came into Vedic astrology as well. So when I was trying to already wrap my head around Western astrology and all the planets, I also came across Vedic astrology, which gave me another level of understanding. So in its own way, I was studying two astrology maps at the same time. So
Wow.
it does get confusing, but at the same time, it makes so much sense when it comes down to the shadow phases of the planets and when it comes down to the resets of different things that go on, because there are different things that they have in their own map as well that can be translated over into the West. So I was just like, okay, well, I'm still confused. But then when I thought more about it, I was just like, well, every culture has its own way of reading the stars. So when I was looking at my own map, when it came down to having a Cancer Mars, I was just like, okay, let me do a little bit of research on, just myself. And so when I came up across a Cancer Mars, they were just like, oh, Cancer Mars manipulative, they're this. And I was just like, okay, I'm still confused. I don't believe all of what it's saying as a true definitive. So the more and more I was just like, okay, what's going on? It just occurred to me, I'm sorry, my painting was falling over. It only occurred to me that, you know, just like the tides, the planets are going to do its thing. And the more I was able to accept astrology into my readings with tarot, it gave me more of a structure, where the planets were the structure and the cards were the fluidity that I needed. So when it came down to learning both, it just felt so much better than listening to so many other people who have a right to say that, but in its own way, people still evolve. And when it comes down to the planets itself, no one has the same chart. No one has the same birth chart. And so in time, of course, a whole bunch of these things are going to change. So when it came down to me going back to Twitter and talking to everyone, it became very apparent that, okay, this can be right and this can be right. And if you do gravitate towards one of the asteroids or the planets, you can help and focus more of that energy towards that sign. And it became a lot easier to follow instead of, oh, this conjuncts this sextiles this, oh, this, all of this. And it just became a lot more easier to understand and read because tarot itself is so emotional, for me anyway. It's never anything that's so clear cut and dry, because even when you have the answers, with my brain as it is, that already wants to have my hand in different pots, it just doesn't make sense. So I needed that structure. So when I applied astrology into it, I was just like, okay, so hopefully, if all else, if you are confused about whatever really is going on around you, there is this structure that's going on in your life that will be apparent for quite some time. And if you do feel moody, if you do feel irritated, this is why. So it just became so much easier. I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry.
No, not so. Like it's interesting to me because again, like astrology is something that I have an interest in and I'm just tapping into that more. I'm actually studying it now. I just started an online course where I'm going to be going into, yeah, the basics of astrology, how to map out charts and all the rest of it. So it's still like I am, at complete beginner level with it. I know some just basic stuff here and there and that's about it. So yeah, for me, it's very interesting to hear that, because a lot of people, like you say, just have a very kind of almost dogmatic approach to astrology. So it's just interesting that you were saying from your own experience that actually, yeah, there is that kind of pitfall there that people can kind of fall into. So for you, what you found useful was, yeah, the fact that you do type in with tarot actually gives you that flexibility that you needed, right? So that is very interesting to me, because I felt like learning more about astrology would give me that that extra dimension to it, right? Especially for general readings and things of that nature, because it'd be much easier to streamline the energies when you're factoring those specific things going on, as well as like certain energies that I'm pulling up and picking up on at specific times, depending on what else is going on. So it would just be good to have that extra insight as to the additional influences. I hope that makes sense.
It does.
Okay, good.
That's also why I'm just like, astrology is so confusing, because it's just like in the universe all the time. One planet's going this way, this planet's going this way.
Yeah.
And even when you have a chance to be like, okay, everything is going on course, like the planets, they're no longer in retrograde, you can go, go, go. Even still, when it comes down to the shadow of the planet, then everyone, or not everyone, but the majority of people would go this way, and then another people would go this way. So even in itself, you could always find chaos somewhere. So it was just, it's just so hard to just follow one road. I'm just like, I don't think that's how it goes though. And that's always just my thinking. And it's just like, it's never just one thing. And that could also be because I'm a Libra cusp with a Virgo. So that may just be.
Yeah, but then that's good, because you have a very analytical mind. You can see the multi-facets, and I think that works to your benefit though, because like you said, then you can draw upon different influences and interpret in your own unique way, rather than having this very rigid like structure, that doesn't always work for you depending on what you're doing. So yeah, I think that's definitely a positive thing for sure. And that's why I guess, like, for me as well, I've been kind of experimenting with, like, as much as there's certain spreads that I like using that are kind of more traditional, like Celtic Cross and stuff like that. Generally, I like creating my own spreads, right? Because then it's kind of like I'm pulling out certain messages that I'm looking for, that I feel like is going to be relevant to whoever needs to hear at that time. And I feel like even just like, it's almost like, doing not quite chaos magic, but it's kind of like forming your own sigils. It's like when you create your own placements, right? When you have your own layout in a spread, I feel like then, you're setting certain intentions so you can pull very specific messages that need to come forward as well, rather than it being just like this luck of the draw, pick one card out of a million, and just see who you happen to hit. It's more, I feel like it's more streamlined to whoever really truly needs that message at that time. That's how I feel, for me anyway. I'm not sure about yourself, but that's kind of how I felt about it.
My readings go everywhere, to be honest. Like, I'm just a sponge sometimes, because as a Libra Cancer, I want to be diplomatic, but at the same time, without me truly forcing it, I can still just go under the current. And even when I feel like I'm not doing anything, then something else comes up, and it's just like, but it was so true. And that's just normally how I feel during just a reading itself, just the process, where I'm just like, I think I'm doing okay. But hopefully and thankfully it does come back, because there are some readings where I'm just like, I feel like I shot very far. And it's also so difficult to read when you shoot so far into the future, because you're still waiting on those results as well. And since both of us are still kind of beginners, just going off of the dates, it's fascinating, because you really want those predictions to come true, especially when they're positive. But when they're negative, you have to be that invisible hand, and it can be frustrating. But then at the same time, it's just, hopefully there is that understanding, that human understanding there, that's just like, okay, this person is trying to help me, and if I don't resonate, I can go.
Exactly.
There's some people who aren't like that, but thankfully most of the time they go away, even past the whole cancer knowledge of they always come back. You know, at least when they come back, there is like a different approach on their side and on the other person's side.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's like kind of what I was saying before earlier, like some people, you know, they feel like they have to express that I don't understand this, it didn't apply to me, it doesn't apply to me, or this happened to me 5 years ago. But I mean, yeah, this is why I kind of also want to do some videos on, you know, these aspects, you know, things to know about, especially general readings and how it works and things to be aware of, so people are not just kind of confused. Because I think a lot of the time, even though I say explicitly in every single video that it may not apply to you, this might not apply to you now, it might apply to you in the future, it might not apply to you at all, it's fine, like, you know, just take it if it does, you know, if it doesn't, cool, like next time maybe, you know. But yeah, there's always still some people that are just like, oh, that's not the case. But what I've also found is when people are, there's been a couple of people in particular, like I just felt it straight away as soon as I saw their messages. They were like, oh no, I don't feel that way, I don't want to get back with them, or I don't miss them. And I'm like, oh, you so do. You so do. I don't even know you. Yeah, but I could just tell, like, straight away, just as soon as I saw the message, I just felt it. I was like, oh my gosh, you so do, you know.
Right. All right.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of, you know, I think in some cases there is a little bit of denial there as well. You know, sometimes people don't always want to hear the message, even though they know it's coming from a good place, and in their hearts they know it's the truth, right? If they resonate with it on some level, they'll know innately that that's their message, right? But sometimes people are resistant to receiving that, and that's kind of, you know, as a reader, you're just kind of like, well, it's fine. Either way, the message is there, you know, take it or leave it. When you're ready for it, come back to it, you know, it's kind of like that. But yeah, I think, to be honest, I've been quite fortunate as well that a lot of people have been quite, you know, very supportive. First of all, you know, people have been very supportive. Really nice messages and comments from people saying how it's been useful, or how it applied to their situation in the past but not now, or, you know, whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of people that do tend to come across our kind of channels are people more or less are willing to keep an open mind on things, and that genuinely want to do the work, right? That's what I feel anyway. I feel like a lot of people that do you know, look at tarot readings on a more frequent basis are looking to get some insight so they can work through whatever situations they're navigating through. Because sometimes you do need the outside perspective, you know, to get that clarity. Because when you're very much emotionally, especially when you're emotionally attached to a situation, it's very difficult to then know exactly how to best approach it without that bias, right? So I do feel like it definitely has like an important place in people's lives if they gravitate towards those tools and those messages, right? But yeah, I just think that, you know, the people who kind of struggle with those messages need to know that it's not enforced upon them, you know. It's you're there, right, to take it or leave it, you know.
And it's always there when you come back, because thankfully exactly. We do have the internet, YouTube. You can thankfully go back and just rewatch a few things. I know that has saved me a couple of times, because even before diving truly into tarot and doing it online, I was always working somewhere, whether it was a server or some other job, because I was always here and there. But when it came down to it, if I truly needed to read something, I could thankfully go back on YouTube or something and just be like, okay, I can see the message, or I can go in my inbox and be like, this is the message.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do as well. I kind of save stuff and I think, okay, I don't have time now, but I'm definitely coming back to that. I just try and, like, you know, bookmark it or save it somehow, and I just come back to it when I need to. But yeah, there's something else I was going to ask you, actually. I had it right there in my mind and now I think I forgot it. Let me see if I can get the cogs spinning again. I always have, like, you know, I'm listening to what you're saying, and then it triggered something. I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to ask you about that, and now it's kind of gone. This is what I wanted to ask you. So you touched upon earlier that your family have kind of learned to accept that this is a part of your life, this is what you do. You know, you're very spiritually minded, that's kind of your path. And they respect that, which is great, you know, because not everyone has that level of support, even if it's not like active support. Just having that understanding is awesome, because I know that a lot of people, especially those that come from like religious families in particular, they don't always get that support. They have a lot of misunderstandings and, you know, inner conflicts because of that. How would you say, like, I mean, in regards to your friendship groups and stuff, would you say that since you became more like focused on spirituality and divination and things of that nature, did you find yourself like meeting and becoming like closer acquainted to new groups of people, new types of people, or did you have the same friends and they just kind of took you as you adapted, you know, and as you grew and changed?
It's hard to tell. And I say that because even when I was part of the church when I was younger, I was very God. Like, I wanted to be pure. I wanted to follow the rules. I was all about just, you know, being in the best light I could be.
Sure.
But when I got older and I started learning more about my roots, I just realized, okay, this still applies to me, but I don't necessarily agree with everything I hear anymore. So growing up, it became such a rift because there were people who could understand my changing and other people who could not. And then when I kept moving, it was the same situation. But now here in Tennessee, how I've been in the last over decade, I think it's decade, 10 years. But when I came back to, no, when I stepped, I'm putting my foot in my mouth. I'm so sorry.
I do that all the time, don't worry. That's how I live.
So here in Tennessee, I wanted to still be part of the church. I still wanted to do my part because I was also going through a lot. We just moved from California to Georgia to Tennessee, so it was just very difficult for me to just blend in because I was always the kid that moved. I was already trying to find my identity everywhere I went. And though spirituality always followed me, when I came to Tennessee, I started wearing a lot more black. I was just in a very depressive state because my sister was ill and my mother wasn't around because she had to go take care of her. So I was around my dad, and there was a lot of issues that happened there as well. Just depression on both of our ends, so it was really difficult. So I was always just there praying, but the thing is, when it came to other people, they were just like, you're a witch, and it's just like, no, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? I'm just sitting here reading Naruto. What are you talking about? But later on, then I kind of fell out of Christianity, started becoming atheist, and then dipping my foot in every other pool as an agnostic. And then slowly but surely, I became a deist and then an ominous. So the people who were around me, they just saw this spiritual evolution everywhere I went. Because, again, I was just trying to question so many different things at the same time. I was just like, I need to find where home is. Because obviously where I wasn't it. And at the age of 25, that doesn't exist anymore. So even though it's a painful pill, I also want to tell other people that, where it's just like, yeah, you'll be lost, but thankfully you will have people that just follow you because they love you. They're just like, yeah, you're crazy, but we love you.
Yeah. I totally identify with that. Like, I don't do myself any favors, to be honest. Like, I just, because I'm always just myself and I come out with stupid shit and I just find silly stuff funny and I'm just like hamming about the place, you know. So everyone's just like, oh yeah, that's just, you know, it's Demari, that's just how she is, you know. And yeah, so when it came to like, well, I'll give you an example, because I grew up in the UK, but I traveled a lot, so that's why I'm now in Greece. Yeah, so when I was younger, I used to have I still have a very good friend called Connor. And he used to always say, like, you know, I can just imagine you one day in a cave, you know, doing your juju stuff with like bones everywhere. And I'm like, yep, that would be me, you know. So then when I started getting into modeling and I did some shoots kind of, you know, with that kind of theme in mind, it was like finally a picture that this, you know, that shows you how I see you, you know. It was so funny. But yeah, so when I kind of got more into this, he was just like, yeah, he wasn't surprised at all. He was just like, that's you, you know. So it was kind of nice that even though a lot of like my good friends that I've had for many years, are not in any way affiliated with anything that I'm interested in on that level. They very much embrace that as that's a part of me and that's okay, you know. So that's always really nice. Because I always say as well, like I don't need people to see things the way I do. I don't need people to approach life in the way I do. As long as, you know, you can discuss ideas, you can have discussions about things and respect each other's take on things, then that's fine, right? Because I remember when I got really into it, I would say like 2015, when I was doing a lot of research and just absolutely everything. When it came to like, you know, the metaphysics, when it came to science, when it came to, you know, the body, psychology, politics, you know, all of this stuff, like, you know, conspiracy theories, everything, pretty much everything you could think of. I just went really far down the rabbit hole, and all I was doing was just researching it, researching it, researching. And at that point, it was kind of like, you know, I didn't know where I was going to hit the bottom. It just seemed to be never ending, and I didn't know where I was going with it either. And I think at times that actually made me quite depressed, because it was like, the more I went into it, the more I saw just how misaligned everything is and how things are not what it seems at all. And I found that really difficult to like sort of live with. It's like, well, where do you go from here when you know that everything's a freaking light, pretty much? Like, how do you then move past that and get into a space that's positive when you feel like everything is kind of false around you, right? So I think that's when I had like a real major like dark night of the soul kind of episode then. But then coming out of that and kind of really, like I said, getting into like balancing myself, getting into alignment, understanding that the things that you have innately as spiritual gifts or psychic gifts or whatever isn't necessarily to your detriment. It can be used positively and all the rest of it. I felt like just such a shift took place then, and that actually that opened the door to like new connections and being able to discuss things in a way that I couldn't before, you know, without having that kind of negative connotation just hanging around there, you know. So yeah, it's really interesting how a shift in perspective can really change how you go about communicating and how you then connect with others. Because at that time, when I was having a really rough time with it, I was just butting heads with absolutely everyone. But then when I kind of came out of that, then it just changed. It just completely changed. So
You used to know what was real around you. It was just so confusing. I get that.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, and that's why I think that's another reason why I think it's so important that, you know, people like ourselves who've already been through that, you know, kind of talk about it and, you know, kind of create some kind of open channel where people feel like they can express their journey with it or get information or insight or even just to hear someone else's story, you know, because when I was going through it, I felt like I was just alone in it. Like I was just losing my mind and that was it, right? So I think it's really important that, you know, that experience is talked about and shared so that others understand that no, it's not just you, you know, this is a part of the process that no one talks about. You hear the airy fairy stuff, you don't hear the nitty gritty, and, you know, hi, that's why I'm here, I'll help you with that. You know, it's kind of
The nitty gritty
like,
is so important. It's so important because we also miss over that most of the time. Well, I know, especially me in the past, I would go so fast on certain things, I wouldn't slow down. And by the time I did slow down, I was just like, damn it, I shouldn't have done that. But now, thankfully, there's a lot more of a slowing nature after all of the manic energy that was just around what is real, what is real, what is real. I went through that as well, so I can very much relate because everywhere I turned, especially coming out of situations myself, you know, I turned around and I was just like, okay, here are the people who I'm just like, I'm all for. everybody else. I don't really care to be around you. Like, I'm just pushing everybody away. I'm cool with it. But now that I've calmed down, I'm just like, sorry, I was a jerk.
Yeah.
And they're just like, you've been a jerk. It's okay. What are you talking about?
It's true, you know, because it's hard. You feel like you don't know what to trust, who to trust, where to turn, you know. And I did. I really like went into hermit mode, but in the wrong way, you know, like it was like the shadow side of the hermit, you know, if that's even a thing. But that's pretty much the energy I was in. So I was just like rejecting everyone, everything. Like it was almost going into a nihilistic view of things because it just felt like I couldn't trust anything anymore. So I do get that. But it's like you say, you know, you come out the other side and you realize like, okay, wow, like I was just a mess, like what was going on? But you know, you get to a point where when you start to forgive yourself, you're like, okay, you were just having a bad one. There was a lot you were navigating through. Obviously, there's no textbook for this stuff, you know. So that's the thing. When, you know, I give advice to people, I always say, listen, especially when it's for like people who are talking to me directly about whatever they're going through. No matter what aspect of their life it is, to say, listen, the advice I'm giving you is because I've taken it myself, because I've been through that myself. I wouldn't tell you something if I hadn't already done it myself. You know, I'm still doing that work now. I am you know, I'm not above you in any way. I'm not like further ahead in the journey. You know, I'm with you. I'm going through that process myself. That's why I'm able to talk to you about it, you know. Because yeah, I'm living it too. You know, that's the thing, and that's the other thing I think what kind of turns me off a little bit towards some schools of thought, and you know, certain people who have who kind of have a big platform and you know have a way of discussing things and approaching things and have obviously their view on certain things, is that there is sometimes an element of ego that comes into play that I really struggle with, you know, and that's something because I'm constantly battering my own ego to keep it in alignment and in check, right? So it's when I see it just kind of running amok in other people, especially people who talk about being so spiritually aligned, I find that really grating and hard to deal with. Again, I know that's part of my shadow kind of coming up. But it's something that I kind of have to like, okay, like, just let them do their thing. It's fine. Oh, this live stream is actually about to time out, so I'm just gonna call you again. Is that all right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, we'll be right back in 1 second. Hello.
I did.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that. I was like, I know it cuts out after an hour or so, but I didn't know how long we've been talking for because who's paying attention? So it's like, yeah, so I didn't want to like just be like in mid-sentence and it's just gone. So yeah, so it's good to have you back on.
Thank you for having me back.
No, that's cool. I'm just gonna get my drink. But yeah, what were you talking about? I have, by the way, my thought process is like this, like my memory is like that of a gnat. It's just like, you know.
As a double air sign, Libra sun and Aquarius rising, I understand. I very much understand. So we were dipping into the shadow aspect and how different readers were conveying their message.
Yes, right. Yeah, I noticed that there's certain things that have been triggering my shadow lately, and that's one of the things. It's like when I feel like someone and it's sad because I feel like the person has a good message, but when I see the ego really come into play, I struggle with that because it's something that I'm really working on myself, you know, because it's not that I feel like, oh, I have all the answers, I am the well of knowledge. It's nothing like that, but it's just I know that obviously in some ways it can come out a little bit, especially when it's triggered. Like if someone's just like, you don't know what you're talking about, or that's wrong. You know, that really triggers my shadow. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm wrong? Give me the facts, you know, it's kind of like that. So yeah, it's just one of those things that I find really interesting, especially with, you know, the new moon in Gemini. I feel like certain things have been coming up over the last couple of days, right? Like that. I mean, what have you been kind of navigating with that? Like, do you feel like those shadow elements have been really like surfacing for you?
My shadow and I have been chilling. So if that makes sense. I've been working on my shadow work for years. I say that because when I was dabbling into everything, around that time, though I was a server, I was also going back into sex work. So
Mhm.
around that time, I had to truly head on face so many things that I didn't even have in my own closet. And though I was ready to always face it, though I wanted to argue with my shadow side so much, later on I realized I was just like, but you were trying to help me. So there is a battle between my shadow and my ego most of the time. I always think there's like three of me. There's always the ego, there's the shadow, and then there's me. But
Yeah,
I've
it's
always said
true.
that. But across the world, I have a Gemini moon, so the astrology again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I just feel like, generally me and my shadow are we're good buds, we're very good friends. Because honestly, like as much as people generally bash the shadow quite a lot, if you can come to understand one another, if your ego and your shadow can come into alignment in a place of understanding, it is your greatest ally. There is
100%.
nothing more powerful than your shadow because it teaches you so much about yourself and others and the reality that you're navigating in, right? And the true extent of the power that we actually have, as a collective and also on an individual basis. So yeah, me and my shadow are like, we're tight. But the thing is, yeah, the thing is, it's like I realize it, like again, it comes back to ego, right? It's ego in the shadow that sometimes kind of clashes a little bit, I feel like. And it's usually one of my triggers. And I realized, because when I was doing the new moon readings for Gemini, the new moon in Gemini readings, just a couple of days ago, the messages that came through were really powerful, beautiful messages, like so glad I was able to do them. And it tied in very much to the light work reading that I did. So that was wonderful. I was over the moon with that, very happy. But then the next morning, I think because I've been having a lot of weird dreams lately. I'm like, okay, yeah, that'll be due to the shift that's going on right now. There's a lot of shifts going on. I kind of realized that certain things that have been still kind of just hanging there in my, unconscious is starting to stir and come to the surface. And I feel like it is very much the end of this previous cycle that's still coming to a close, right? There's still some elements that are kind of being wrapped up. So I just found it interesting that there were certain things that I thought I'd put to bed is already like, it's starting to come up again. So I'm like, okay, there's some aspect of that I need to still heal, still need to approach, because it's like, the thing about the healing journey is that a lot of people assume that you deal with a specific area or a specific issue or a situation and then it's done. But it's never like that, because there's so many aspects to any one thing. So you're having to like heal it from like a 360 degree, it's like you're having to do it from each angle to truly then be able to release it, right?
They're just like, are you sure you've released it? Are you sure you released it? Are you sure? And then you realize, not really, but as long as you've learned something from it and you're still going on the better path, it works out. It really does. When you think it doesn't, it always turns out in the end, and you're just like, I realize I was complaining, and part of me wants to vindicate it. But thank you, universe. I really appreciate knowing that you have my back. And it's so hard to always get to that as well. I don't want to seem like it's fun. Because
Yeah.
most of the time we just get dragged. Because though the shadow does come out and it wants to help us, most of the time when the shadow comes up, it does want to battle the ego, because the ego wants to be like, no, I'm fine, I'm completely okay, nothing's wrong. And then the shadow's just like, she's a liar.
Yeah. It calls you out on your bullshit, like it really does, it doesn't hold back. It's just like, nope. And especially when you've like, you've come out the other side of a difficult cycle, the realizations that set in and you're just like, ooh, that was me. That part was me. Like I can't blame that or this, that, and the other. That was me. You know, even when you do things that you don't realize how unconsciously you were sabotaging yourself or you put that energy out, you know, and then when you realize that after doing the work, it's just like, wow, like there's no way to escape that knowledge. It's like, you know, the Ace of Swords kind of moment. Like once that knowledge comes in, there's no way of turning that off, you know, it's already in your awareness. So it's like, just work with it, you know, just keep moving forward, learn from it, and you'll be fine. You know, it's only when people refuse to accept the truth that they just end up going back to the same cycles, right? Just over and over, because it's just that denial coming through.
And then even in the denial, it has something else to teach you. It's just
Yeah.
like a little Russian, I think it's a little puppet where it's just
Like the
there's
Russian
more,
doll. Yeah.
there's more and more just underneath it all. Just like,
Yeah, definitely. And you never stop learning, you never stop growing. And that's why even when like you think you've learned from a situation and you've closed that cycle out, sometime later you might find yourself in a very similar situation because there's something more that you need to uncover. You know, I've definitely experienced that in my life, and I'm like, how's this happening again? Like, where did this come from? I thought we were done with this, but it's like, no, 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 you're not done. You still got more to learn. You've got a whole lot more to learn. So, yeah, I find that really interesting as well, how you're just like, okay, so what this time? You know, what's next? It's that kind of energy.
but I realized you also have to, it's so hard because people are always telling you, especially the advanced monks, they're just like, you have to get your thoughts under control. And it's so
Yeah,
hard. And what I've
it is.
realized, what helps is that I visualize a color, because instead of trying to rant and go on and on and on and on in my head, it's just like visualize a color and it neutralizes itself, thankfully. And because there has been so many things, I'm pretty sure everyone has just buried this pile of anger, and it's always
Mm.
something that we should listen to more. It's always something that we should construct more. You know, anger in itself is like destruction. It's needed, but it needs to be directed better. And it's
Exactly.
something that I've struggled with for years. And thankfully, I am coming to a neutral point where I'm just like, okay, you know, I'm getting this under control. But there are times, especially, you know, it goes past the spiritual community when it comes down to, you know, what's going on with the government, what's going on with people, poverty. And though we're in somewhat of an exalted position because we have a roof over our head, food, it's so difficult at times because then that other part of you wants to fall back a little bit, where it's just like, are you
Mm.
sure? Are you sure? I know that's how it is for me, where it's just like, I know I'm doing great. I know I'm getting messages out there, but as soon as that shadow comes out, and then everything else kind of floods in as well, where it's just like, well, this is happening in the world. This is happening in the world. And so it's a juggle between staying humble and evolving. And it really does clash a lot because you want to just go out there and be like, you know what, blow everything to the wind. And then that also brings chaos into your thoughts as well. And it's so difficult to just get to that neutral point so we can actually do our job, especially when the projections are thrown at us as readers. So it's
Yeah.
just, you never really know what's going on in someone's life. And even as a reader, you know, they could be coming to you for entertainment, just a little bit of relaxation. And then all of a sudden, there's just
The
this huge
floodgates.
coagulating energy that's just like, you didn't know I was here. But
Yeah, it's
thankfully
funny.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just gonna say, like, it's funny you say that because I literally saw a post, I think it was yesterday on Twitter, and the girl was like, "Can I please have a tarot reading or come across a tarot reader where the tarot reader doesn't say a past person is coming back in?" You know, it was something to do with that. Like, she was so sick of hearing that in the message. She was like, "Can I find anyone that's not gonna tell me?"
But it may not be from this lifetime. It could be from a different lifetime. And that's what always
Yeah.
trips people up. It doesn't have to be this lifetime. It could be your last lifetime.
It's true, you know, and you don't know what's going to happen and how those energies are going to pertain to you and when. Like, there's so much to it, and that's the thing. You're not only integrating experiences from this life, like this lifetime, you've also got everything from before and everything from where you're headed, right? And it's like, because we're only able to, like, at least consciously look at it from, this sort of linear timeline, right? Because we're operating in Cronus time, essentially. It's hard to factor that in your day-to-day life, right? Because you're so used to living in the present, or of course, if you have some things that are still hanging over you from the past, sometimes you're living in the past also. And then when you have anxiety, obviously, yeah, sometimes you're dipping into the future, but it's not from that perspective. It's still coming from this kind of linear perspective. So when you're then being told to factor in something from a previous lifetime or a future lifetime, it's like, what? A lot of people just are like, what am I even supposed to do with that knowledge? Because it is a lot. Yeah. And I got that really profoundly, actually, in those readings that I just did on my channel. Like, I can't remember if it was for, I think it was maybe air signs. I can't remember, but that was a very key message in that past life experiences and skills and knowledge was like being integrated into this present timeline, right? And so yeah, I know for whoever, I'll have to go back over because I don't even remember, but whoever that applied for, they're gonna go through it a little bit, because there is going to be this, this shift between the knowledge that's coming in and the experience and awareness from those past lives, trying to integrate that with who they are now, where they're at now, what they're experiencing this lifetime. So they're going to be like, they're going to feel like there's like some multiple personality stuff going on for a little bit, because you're trying to integrate all those different facets of self all at once, so
It
yeah.
can get scary. I know, especially when a lot of people don't teach you about your third eye. You start
Yeah.
seeing shadows, and that happens especially when you're younger. And then as you're younger, you're just like, I just want this to go away, and then you start to repress it. And so when all of these things start to come up, it's just like, I feel like or somebody could feel like they're back at this age again. Because I know, especially when I started opening my third eye, I was beginning to see things that I used to see when I was little, and I was just like, wait a minute, hold on. I didn't sign up for this. But at the same time, then you have to go through the process of slaying your enemies or slaying your demons, which is just yourself. Like every enemy, every demon is somehow found within self, and then there are different characters that shift that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the thing, like, the first and foremost is dealing with the self. Even if there are some outside influences or whatever, you still have to be aware that if there is an energy that's coming from an outside source, it's drawn to an aspect of your being, right? There's something about your being that's also enabling that exchange to take place, right? So it's important to be aware of that, and the energies that you emit, the thoughts that you have, the way you view yourself, the way you view your reality, all of these things, because it's shaping your life, it's shaping who you are as well, so it is really important. And I feel like, that's where sometimes as a reader as well, it can be a bit challenging, because you don't know the people on that level, right, that you're reading for. Even if it's a personal reading, you're not necessarily going to know someone to that level, right? Particularly if it's a client and it's not someone you are actually, closely affiliated with. So that's like a whole nother dimension that you can't necessarily factor in, because it's just not possible in the time frame that you have. And it's just up to that person to, be able to take the message as is needed and apply it to their circumstances as needed, right?
I completely agree. It's so confusing, but then at the same time, we were taken away from this knowledge so long ago. And though even in Native culture, they knew this was going to happen, we're still in the pivotal time of, we can change, or we can, I really don't know what the other answer would be. There's only just forward from here. There's truly no going back, though we're still trying to put the two and two together, and that in itself just doesn't make sense. And I think a lot of people are catching on to that as well. You know, it's fine for spirituality to have its place because it's something that's traditional, something we'll always go back to. But when it comes down to how some people go about it, you know, there's more and more people that are just questioning now and coming back to the light. And though there was one reader, I think it was Black Women Cry on Twitter, she mentioned how, you know, there's going to be more occults and more churches that pop up that claim to help people. So now, like I said, we're still in this pivotal time of just, we really have to be that invisible hand of, we can't help you. You can only help yourself. But even as someone who, you know, you have to trust us off of blind faith, you know, you still have to go this way. And it's so hard for some people to recognize that, because even if it's like on this big platform, it's just like, well, you don't know my situation. And that's what I also come into conflict with some readers, because I can tell that you worked in an office with some of them, and others of them where it's just like, okay, you've worked with people, you've had to deal with several different personalities before, you know, I can trust this, compared to, you know, I've only been at this job and we haven't changed. And that's just not our generation either. So there's such a gap. So that's one thing I come into conflict when it comes down to astrologers and readers. Though it's nothing truly against them, the moment they stop trying to change and learn, though they are learning in their own way, it's difficult for everybody to stay on this one path, which is just spirituality. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, you know, it's like we were saying, and it ties into what you're saying now as well, kind of what I was saying before, that I just have a problem with anything where it's just like, it's my way or the highway, and it's like this linear thinking, like you said, but there's no room for question or for challenging or exploring and just evolving, you know, because even like when I was having that moment where I was so sure that, you know, things are not real and it's not like this and it's not like that, and, you know, I was kind of like rejecting all of the information that people were putting out to me, because a lot of the time it wasn't information, it was just like I'm saying you're wrong, and you know, it is this narrative that we're fed and that's it, you know. So obviously I had a problem with that, but I feel like, you know, at least generally when it comes to the spiritual community, I think most people do have their heart in the right place. They are open to some level, they're willing to explore and question. That's why they're in that community. But I still feel like there is this kind of clique mentality. I think with tarot readers, in particular, like the online tarot community, for example, there's much less of that, you know, which I'm really grateful for, to be honest. And there is a lot less of that. But generally, overall in the spiritual community, I still feel like there's kind of some clique mentality, and you can see certain groups of people together. And, you know, if you're trying to just express something, or, you know, if you're putting your input or wherever, they're not going to be interested because you're not affiliated with this, that, and the other. Do you understand what I mean? Like, you know, so I feel like there is still a bit of that in there, which is a shame, because I'm all about, you know, people coming forward and putting forward a perspective that's completely new to me, because then I go away and think about it, you know, and I'm literally laying there in bed at night, supposedly sleeping, you know, just like, oh yeah, I remember when they said that. So what if that happened? And then how does that relate to that? And then my brain goes on the tangent, and then, you know, 5 hours later I'm still there. But, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, being able to just
always appreciate those nights, because you can get back to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, I'm really excited to be, you know, studying astrology now, because it's like something I'm really, really curious about these days. And yeah, like I said, I don't know that much about it. I know some basic stuff, and you know, couple of people give me some pointers as well to check out some things, which is cool. But you know, I'm a complete novice to it, so I'm kind of coming at it with fresh eyes almost, and yeah, just have a genuine interest on, you know, learning more about the subject and how I can integrate it in my own personal way to the work that I'm doing, you know. And I think it's good that there are people of our generation and mindset that are kind of like supporting that as well, and just allow people to be and to just put out their own take and their own message. I feel like there's a lot more room and air for that in, you know, our age group than possibly in the previous generations, right?
Where they
Um,
mainly had to hide away.
yeah, that's the thing. So I feel like as well, like with the upcoming generations, you know, especially like sort of those that are around 17, 18 years of age currently, it's going to be interesting to see the road that they navigate through, because their experience growing up is very different even to ours, right? Because I remember before the internet was a thing. I remember before, like, we had this, that, and the other, right? But for them, like, they grew up having the internet just readily available, you know, having certain tools that they could get information from whenever they needed, right? Whereas with us, we had to dig to find stuff, you know, and that even though, okay, yeah, we can get information easily now, and there's been things that have been out for some time, there's still a lot of things that are only really being discussed now, you know. So it's like it's just going to be interesting, like what happens, what they do with that knowledge, because I feel like from what the studies have been showing, and just the general way a lot of like millennials convey messages, I feel like they are more keen to learn than say previous generations were. For them, it was more about work and just getting stable and all the rest of it, right? Because that's what you need, right? But for them, it's kind of like they're navigating a completely different world, you know, because there's different challenges. So now they're all about knowledge, information, how they can build their skill set, how they can build their awareness, you know. And, you know, I feel like they are much more vocal on, like, you know, politics and things of a social nature and, you know, that sort of thing. So it's very interesting. It's an interesting shift.
I do feel a little bit sad for the generation behind us, though. There
Mm.
was a course that I was taking in business this year that it mentioned the different aspects of our generations. And my parents, they're traditionalists, so they're a lot older than most parents. So when I came to the internet, of course, it was just an explosion of knowledge. But this particular thing that really pointed out to me, I do feel very sad for a whole bunch of this generation, the next generation, because they had more school shootings, there's more
Yeah.
violence. Though with us, we had a whole bunch of negotiation and terrorist things going on. You know, violence is at their doorstep more readily than anything before. And their
Yeah.
attention, you know, it makes sense why it's so everywhere. Of course, it's when Pluto was in Sagittarius, and that makes a lot of sense. You know, you still kind of have this feeling of, you know, we really don't know what to tell you either when it comes down to what's about to come.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things that we just didn't truly experience, like how you all did, where there. And there was one thing that was very interesting, especially with the next generation. They don't like telephone calls. So it's interesting to see where or how their voice is going to evolve in just the
Mm.
time to come, because no matter what, with tradition, you still have to stick to this path. And that's something that most people who are coming into spirituality just have to learn as well. You have to get that crash course of emotions, feelings, trauma, all of the
Yeah.
ancestral stuff, family, and especially when it comes down to people who also just don't have that either, where they just don't have family anymore. And when I do my podcast, I realize that I do pick up on people who just don't have parents anymore, or they don't have the resources that some people have, and they're just
Yeah.
luxuries. So it's very interesting to see how it's going to come up, but I do worry about them a little bit, because I'm just like, you know, we also have to navigate certain situations that they're just so normalized to, where we
Yeah.
could just find it on the computer just because of whatever, either looking it up or something pops up on Facebook. Just the exposure is just so different. And hopefully we can guide them so they can also help guide us when we need it. but
Yeah.
it's so hard to tell. And that's
Yeah.
just something my mind has been on. And especially years ago when they had the fire trine, you know, the more and more I think about the fire placements, I'm thinking, you know, it's kind of like Zuko and Iroh. Like, what kind of fire sign are we asking for here? You know, are they on the path of, you know, I don't want to be a huge player in this game. You know, I'd rather go down this road. And if they do go down this road, what kind of future are we bringing to the table as the people of, what is it, Pluto and Scorpio? Because, you know,
Yeah.
though our hands are always in the pot, we always have to find some way to construct ourselves. And I think that's what Uranus and Taurus is trying to shake up with our generation, where it's just like,
Yeah.
we understand that, you know, you do a lot of things, but we need you to do this too. And that's one of the responsibilities that I see astrologically, because I'm always shooting back and forth. It's hard for me to stay in the present, but thankfully I am anchored through my body. But everything else, I'm also spiritually just shooting forward and always shooting back. I'm just like, what is to happen? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, and it gets even more tricky when you're factoring the shift in timelines as well. I don't know if you've noticed this, but honestly, in the last, I would say, well, for me, it started about 6 years ago, but especially the last 2 years, it's been insane. Like this convergence of timelines, you know, because when people talk about, you know, like parallel realities and stuff like that, it's a concept that I find fascinating, but I just kind of explore it more like as possibilities and ideas and, you know, but it's another thing when you're experiencing this shift and you feel like you're literally even not only spiritually, but like physically feeling the effects of this convergence, you know, this kind of singularity effect almost, where certain timelines are shifting into one complete timeline. Like that shit is crazy, you know, when you're considering, like, for example, before a couple of these shifts took place, I was having these visions and I was seeing these events taking place. Like for one, I was seeing like fire and, you know, just smoke all over a city. It was really bad. I don't think the fire was in the city itself, but I just remember seeing a lot of fire. And then I remember seeing smoke coming into the city and news reports about it. And I was just like, what is this relevant to? Because I was keeping an eye on the news just in case something important was coming up, but there was nothing that made me think that it was in relation to that. So I forgot all about it. And then boom, what happens? The Amazon's on fire. And then, you know, the cities were starting to be engulfed with the smoke and all these news reports came out about it. And I was just like, oh my God, like it literally, like when I heard about that, it just kind of triggered the same feeling that I felt when I saw that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like that actually happened, you know? I just thought, okay, maybe it's just a coincidence or something like that. But then I thought, you don't believe in coincidence, though, so what are you talking about? It's kind of like that. But, you know, and then there's other things that I've seen, but I haven't come to pass. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Hopefully that does not happen because it was not good. But it's just weird how like there was certain, you can sometimes tap into certain things, and I imagine if you have that awareness of astrology as well, you can see even more certain scenarios that can play out, or at least the types of ways in which it could play out, right? Because of the energies and how that can affect us, right? So then when you then factor in these shifts in timelines and, you know, certain events that come about or something that then shifts the timeline or brings these specific timelines into a singularity, then it's just like there's no way to truly discern which path we're going to take until we get to it. And then you can see, okay, this is likely to then occur from there. So it's like a whole nother aspect. So you're not only accounting for the trajectory that we're currently on, but you're also accounting for these possibilities, right? So it's just like, what?
I don't know about you, but I recently went on a forum, I believe it was a month or two ago, and it's part of the story, but about, I want to say it was 7 months ago, I started astral projecting more and more. Though it's very easy for me to do it, it just became so natural. I was just like, how am I able to do this even when I'm awake? Like, what's really going on? And then 2 months ago, when I was in a forum, they were discussing how more and more psychic abilities are going to be coming to the surface. And then another reader that I checked into not too long ago, it was a few weeks ago, she's talking about more and more powers are being unleashed, more and more people are becoming awakened to just this huge shift. So it's interesting to see everything that we used to know destroyed. As an artist, I'm just like, okay, you know what, I'm down. You know, let's just see how it goes. But at the other end of it, it's just like, you know, how is this going to go? Because they wanted to suffocate people in a way, in a sense. We won't get into it. But
no subject.
Yeah. We don't have all the time. We might get censored. It's just too much.
Yeah.
But they took this information from us, and now we have to keep writing, keep putting it out there, and not silence our voice. And this year with, I believe it's the North Node, Rahu, who's in Gemini, and though it's going to be exalted because there's going to be more and more things that are going to be push, 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 let's get this out there, let's get this out there, we still have to be so mindful that we're not on just one playing field anymore. And I just found that really interesting, just from the shift from the North Node being in Cancer, shifting over into Gemini. Yeah. So it's just like, what's really going on, Gemini? What's going on? So I've realized I'm doing more work in the astral realm, more work in my dream works, more work just in reality itself. And then corporations are just like, they're calling people back to work. So there's so many different aspects of people and just ourselves. We're just like, okay, what's going on? Because though we are one human being and we are waking up to that us being superhumans, you know, what is to be done? And I don't think that's really clicked in with a lot of us yet, especially now that people are experiencing what we've experienced back in 2015, 2016. So just that gap in itself is just, where are these people? Like, where can we direct you? And even so, there's such a blank space in front of all of us. How do we create it? How do we recreate it? What's really going to happen? What's really going on? There's so many questions that we ourselves have to bring to the forefront, because it's still Gemini. Like, we have to make our own luck in some way, because the other aspect is in Sagittarius. So it's so difficult with these two energies too, because they're mutable, they're everywhere. And it's just like, okay, we understand that these energies have been battling humiliation, being humble for years, but now how do we do that globally? Like, what can we do as readers? Because I know for me personally, though I'm on this road of spirituality, I still know that in the future I have to branch off and do something so I can help build the future, like, for other people. But even still, it's just, what are we to do now? Because we all have to split in our own ways coming up, most likely, though we'll all stay on this path. What is really to come? And I think that's my question for a lot of people. Well, I guess I'm just voicing it for a lot of people, because there's so many different aspects that are now just being revealed. All the veils are back. And now it's just like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that is the question at this point. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, especially with this new moon energy. It's been very, like, clear, you know, even with my just readings I'm doing for myself, my personal readings, that energy is still very present. It's like, okay, now's the time, you know, you got to step up, you got to start taking things to the next level. That's why I literally, on Friday, I handed in my resignation from my job, because I was just like, now's the time, you know, the universe is like, chop, chop, let's go. Yeah, you know, because there's no time, you know, the work has to be done now. So this is another thing what I was screaming about back in 2015, because I was getting some crazy downloads, just one after the other. I was very much aware that we were running out of time. You know, we were meeting certain deadlines, you know, within that timeline that we were navigating. Like, now's the time, we've got to do the work, we've got to get in deep now. Now's the time to face the shadow. You have to do it. If you don't do it, you're going to have a rude awakening. and you are going to be left behind, you know. So I was like ringing the bell, you know, like the doomsayer in the
Let
cloak,
us in.
you know, ringing the bell. That was me, because I was just like, yeah, like I was very much aware, and the veil was already getting so thin, you know, so there was so much already coming in. And I felt like, okay, like people need to be aware, you know. Obviously, unfortunately, a lot of people didn't take the messages that were coming from various sources, not just me, you know. At that point, I didn't even have a platform for that. I was just voicing my opinions on my personal profiles and stuff. But there was a lot of people doing it on like genuine platforms, you know, like real platforms. And, you know, so I thought it was interesting that I wasn't the only one that was getting those downloads. Of course I wasn't, but like other people were getting very similar messages, and they were trying to sound the alarm also, because they were aware in their own ways and through the insights they got that there was certain shifts taking place, and there was significant events that will alter the course depending on how we react also and what we do within that. So, yeah, it was really interesting. But now I feel like we're getting to this point where the veil is almost non-existent. You know, everything is so just in your face now. It's just there, you know, there's nothing hidden so much anymore. So now a lot of people are just kind of like in the space of, where do we go from here? You know, a lot of people are not vocalizing so much. Some people are, but a lot of people just literally don't know what to do, like what the answer is, you know. And I, like you say, I feel like, you know, people such as ourselves do have a responsibility to find our own way of doing the great work, right? In whatever capacity feels natural to us, in whatever means we have to do it in, right? But I feel like there is this meeting point coming up soon. I do talk about it in my light work reading. I know I keep banging on about it, but it's just so relevant to what we're talking about. You know, it's literally about this, you know. And I mentioned that there is a point where I feel like as a collective, we will meet. You know, there will be this brief meeting
I've been getting that as well.
Yeah, you know, and then we'll all come together, you know, not physically, but there is going to be this great meeting that hasn't happened in I don't even know how long. And then it will be so brief, but from there, that moment is everything, because that's where a new vision can come into play, and that can change the course of everything. So depending on where we're at that point, it's going to dictate where we're headed. You know, so I feel like it's really important that we get our minds right, that we set our intentions, that, you know, we're all trying to shift with these changes in frequency, because not only are we kind of being worked on heavily to change and adapt and grow and to ascend in frequency, it's happening to the planet. You know, the planet's going through a massive frequency shift as well. It has been for years now, but it's really ramped up in the last few years, you know, to a level that is unprecedented, you know. And aside from like the shifts in the poles and just, you know, it coming through, it's I can't remember the time frame, but I think it's like every, was it 1,200 years or every 12,000 years or something, there's like an end of a cycle. There's like a shift that the planet goes into. I can't remember how often that happens. It's like every so many thousand years or whatever, there's this end of a cycle and start of a new cycle. And it's funny because a lot of the time it does coincide with the rise and fall of civilizations, right? And there always seems to be this period where there's like between the end of one civilization and the birthing of another, there's like this 500-year period of just chaos. You know, where the old structure is crumbling down and a new one is slowly being built, right? And I feel like, you know, we're already in that 500-year period. I feel like we're already seeing the slow destruction, like the tower moment of, you know, our way of life. Yeah, I feel like we're already in that period, and that, you know, what we do now is going to dictate what comes at the end of that, you know. So that's what I'm really interested in, because even though, okay, we might not be around to see the outcome, it's still gonna have a significant impact on all things and ourselves. So it's important to be aware that you are an active participant in that. And I think that one of the greatest deceptions that is currently taking place is people being made to feel like nothing they do has an impact. You know, that there's nothing they can do to change the course of anything, that they're just a puppet or they're just an unwilling participant that has no real power, that, you know, is just there, right? It's like one of the greatest deceptions.
Yes, they could be so far from the truth. But it also is a little bit of self-denial as well, because I don't think they've been able to truly see their results. Or maybe it's looking back and giving just a little bit of gratitude, because gratitude will magnify everything that you haven't been looking at.
Definitely, definitely. And that's why I think, like, the problem is people want to express gratitude when things are great. And it's like, you can't just do it when things are great. Even if things are going wrong, you have to be grateful for the things that are still good in your life, the things that even when it's been hard and you look back and you're like, that was difficult, but I'm so glad it happened because of the insight that I have, because of where it got me to, you know, because of what I've been able to understand and then use to help others going through that. You know, it's in all sorts of ways. You know, you have to express gratitude, and with that, then you can kind of come more into alignment and realize that actually, it's not all bad. That you can create positive changes, that yes, you do have a voice, yes, your actions do matter, your energy is needed, you know. And I think I feel like that's like a key underlying factor of what we do as well as readers, is trying to remind people that the individual does have power. And that while, you know, I mean, I know there's certain channels that say, oh, you know, like, you know, people aren't able to change their reality. There's how many people in the world and the rest of it. But obviously, you know, there's certain things you can change on it, like for yourself as an individual to some extent. But obviously, as a collective, you can, there's like, honestly, if you were to come together as a collective and make certain shifts or make certain changes, there's nothing that can't be done, pretty much. If the collective would be nothing. Sorry?
I said it's all a domino effect.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I see people don't even realize how sometimes they're also just playing as a vessel until they figure out what they really want to do. And I think that's where they can also feel so neglected, because I don't think they always want to be that certain person that wants to just be a vessel or understand that position as well. So there could be, most of the time, there is resentment that just kind of peaks up. But even then, it's just like, it's okay for you to have that emotion as long as you're able to talk about it, really work on it, and maybe just, you know, figure out and solidify different things about your personality for you to let a little bit of that go. Because I'm not saying it's always going to be let go, but at least it's to the point where it's not like you're so aggressive towards a situation you can't talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. There's another thing I'm curious about from yourself, because I don't really talk about this so much. Like, what I'm curious about to discuss with you is the twin flame concept, like the twin flame connections and journeys and all the rest of it. Because it's not something I really talk about through my channel. To be honest, it's not something I have much knowledge on. I get the concept of it. And I do feel like absolutely there are certain karmic connections and situations that play out between people which are necessary for the journey and things of that nature. But when people talk about twin flames in like the tarot community, well, first of all, do you want to give your definition of what you think it means in regards to tarot and, you know, how that pertains to a person's journey, and then what you feel about it?
Yes. When it comes down to twin flames and soulmates, I do believe in that, but I don't think it happens the way people want it to happen, which is why they run into that effect so much, and that's why they're consistently looking for this one road. And I'm not saying that it's bad. There are some people who would rather live a life, become a wife, you know, have a very quiet way of living, and that's fine. But when it comes down to you blindly just ignoring everything else around you, it becomes a little difficult. And I'm not saying that everyone does it, because most of the time these people are already very present in their life. They're looking around, they're very aware of what they want, but they get so lost in searching in one place that it becomes a liability. Where it's just like you can't just keep looking in this one area. You have to just explode and experiment with so much more than you already know. And when it comes down to love and today's day and age, I run into huge conflicts with it, because though monogamy is fine, it is what it is, but for it to be that one singular thing, it's just not true. It's just not true, because even behind marriage, there's so many different things that could happen. So even if you marry your twin flame, you still have other soulmates that will come in and test that structure. And a soulmate doesn't always have to be someone who's positive, and a twin flame isn't always someone who's positive either. They can drag you from your ankles. So I don't like touching on it unless I have to. And if I do have to touch on it, I have to say something that's very definitive, where it's just something that is true around the board. It's just stamped on their personality, because people will still wrap themselves in emotionally. I know, I've been there. I've 110% been there. But when you focus on a personality and make it indifferent, you can see all sides of it. So if you say that someone is just annoying, I mean, whether someone's just like, oh, I can deal with annoying or not, at least it's present for them to focus on something where it's just like, can you really? Are you okay with this? Like, are you sure you're not putting anything off that you are taking away from yourself? And that's a very baby example, because I don't want to get into the two extremes, because when it comes down to manipulation and abuse, it's not something that you can see right off the bat. It's something that does evolve in time. And sometimes it's also a very shocking experience. So it goes two ways. And sometimes that's even very questionable, because it can veer off into so many different directions. But I want people to be a little bit more weary when it comes down to soulmates and twin flames, because it's not clear cut and dry. Like, for example, my neighbor is a soulmate. My doggo is a soulmate. So they came into my life, they've helped me, they've helped calm me down, but overall it's just something that you have to focus not on one box. There's just no way. You can have a list, but it can't be a box. You can't carry it everywhere, and you can't really take it with you either. So it's just really hard to match it unless it's something that's positively true. And even if it's positively true, there's still negatives to the situation. And I don't think people recognize how well positive and negative should collate, but it's also hard to tell what their limitations are and what the other person's limitations are, because people change. But even with people changing, you don't know everything on the list. It's difficult. It can become toxic, and it can become wonderful. It's very hard, and it also deals with will, courage, love, but at the same time it could deal with codependency. Sometimes it could deal with abuse, and also not looking at your shadow side and not listening to your shadow side, or anger, and suppressing everything. So it's a little difficult to talk about it, but I only bring it up unless I have to.
I agree. You know, I feel like, you know, that interview where Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill are like, I think it was for like Batman versus Superman, and he's talking, and Ben Affleck's just sat there and he's like, I agree. I'm literally like that, except I'm listening to every word you're saying, and it's, I agree. There's nothing more to say, really. Like, that's how I view it. That's why I don't really go into it on my channel either, because it's like, I feel like, there's certain connections, like soulmate connections, twin flame connections, that come into your life at any point for a particular reason. It was relevant at that time. There's obviously something that can be gained or learned or understood from it, right? But like you say, it's not always positive. Everyone, because the problem is a lot of the time when people hear that, they think, oh, this is the person I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with. And then that in itself is very dangerous, because then if you get into that mentality, you might ignore a whole bunch of red flags, as well as the true message and the true understanding that's supposed to be gained from the situation, right? Because you just assume, oh yeah, but that's my person, that's my person. And that's just,
learning?
yeah, and that's really dangerous, you know, because that's the thing, even from a personal perspective, I've had multiple situations like that, you know, where I've had a twin flame connection, a soulmate connection, you know, they are my soulmates, but are they necessarily good for me? Should they be in my life currently? That's a whole nother subject, you know, it's not, you know, mutually, it doesn't work out that way, right? It's just not how it is. So while, yeah, there are a couple of connections I've made that I know for a fact that they're my soulmates, they're not people I'm supposed to be with romantically. They're people that I'm always going to have in my life as like family, you know, because we are aligned in that way, and because we just, you know, there is just that meeting of minds and that exchange of positive energy and support, and just being able to navigate through difficult circumstances, you know, and knowing that we can support one another through that, right? Having that understanding. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you about that, because it's something that gets talked about so much when it comes to tarot and the community and stuff. It's something that comes up all the time. And I just feel like it's something that's so miscommunicated and not really understood very well. So that's why I was really interested in getting your take on it. But you said it better than I can. So yeah. So I think if I ever need to like mention what it is, I'm just going to play that back and be like, here you go.
Don't worry about it. Just experience it. And when you notice that it's no longer your path, then you gotta start naturally going your own way, because if you force yourself out of it, you're gonna be straight back there.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm cutting them off. And then here they are. Oh, right. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
pushing them out. You just have to naturally come out of it.
Yeah, it's true. But the problem is as well is like, those kind of circumstances with those kind of connections are difficult, because energetically it's very hard to break those ties, especially when the timing is not right, when there's still more that needs to be done or understood, or there's still something that hasn't come to some kind of closure, you know, there's something that's still playing out energetically. It's very hard to sever those connections. You know, and I get a lot of people just like, I've seen it a lot on my videos, like, I just want this person gone. How do I get rid of them? How do I detach from them? Why am I still emotionally connected to them? You know, I see that kind of, you know, question coming up a lot. And it's like, it's not so easy to do. Like, it's not a case of just being able to shut a door on it and it's done. You know, it's difficult, because yeah, it's a hard one to answer, I find. Like, it's something I do want to discuss at some point, but yeah, that's the one question I'm like, oh gosh, how do I answer that? Because they're probably not gonna like the answer. You know,
because everyone's love language is different, because it all comes back to how this person was raised and what makes them comfortable, what makes them not comfortable. And then there was a therapist that I follow sometimes on YouTube, because she has great advice. I forgot her name though. But she mentioned sometimes in healthy relationships, you don't always get what you want. And that is a good thing, because sometimes, even though we hate the whole parent role where somebody who we're romantically involved with becomes like our parent, but sometimes we also forget that we're acting like a baby.
Yeah.
So, it's not always easy, because again, you still have to go through the facets of life of just like, well, if you really do want to be with this person, well, here's all these aspects of this person, but you also have to take into account that they're going to change and you're going to change, and that's just how it is. And though people believe that people don't change, that's not entirely true. It's not entirely true. It's not a clear-cut road. It's very up and down. Sometimes it's wavy, sometimes it's jagged, But I think in those situations, I think those people need to not be so aggressive with themselves. I know it becomes a situation where it's just like, no, this person is really bad for me. Like they're abusive, or they could be in this situation, or they have financially drained me. In those situations, I understand that it's not easy, but then you also need a support system. You know, you can't just rely solely on your heart sometimes. Your heart also needs people around you to also be like, hey, I also have your best interest at heart. And though compared to PTSD and different things like that, it's difficult because especially if you have PTSD, you're going to be going back and forth in your aggression. And especially if you're coming out of any type of soulmate or twin flame situation, because they become, you know, your soulmate and twin flame, because now since you've been thinking about each other for so long, your energy's been attached to each other for so long, it's hard. But you also have to remember, you have to naturally come out of it. You can't hold yourself to such a degree like they did that you forget that you're human. It just doesn't work like that. And you can become emotional. It's fine. We're all emotional. And I think they forget they can be emotional too. Just people. They're just like, no, I'm tough. I can do this. And it's just like, you can cry. So you can finally get to the base of what's really going on. You can punch a pillow.
It's true. It's so much healthier than just keeping everything contained. And that's what I always like try and convey as well. Like, you know, it's okay to do that. You know, you don't have to keep a brave face on all the time. Just release it. If you're feeling that surge of emotion, just allow it to come out. You know, and I used to have that. Like, I used to be so mad when I was younger because of like difficult circumstances that I was navigating growing up. And I didn't have a means to vent that initially. So I was just so mad. And then, you know, that's how I really threw myself into my like creativity through like drawing and dancing and, you know, just being able to express myself in some way, having some outlet. And then when I was able to do that, and when I was able to finally break down those walls, oh my God, I felt like for like 2 years I was just crying mostly, you know. It was just like that release that needed to happen. I can't believe this is about to time out again. I just realized I've just got the little notification, like 30 seconds remaining.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I don't want to just leave it on this note. So I will call you again one last time. We'll talk about things a little bit more and then we'll close out properly. Okay, so I will just call you back again. Aha, you're back. I was trying to get you added and it wasn't working. I was like, oh no, but you're here. Yeah, I was just saying, like, it's been so interesting. Like, it's hard to like stop. I'm just like going and going. I'm like, I can't stop. I can't stop. But no, it's been great. I love talking to you about all these subjects. And
For having me again.
yeah, I mean, if you're open for it, like, I would love to discuss all sorts of things with you, for sure. It's been really, really fun, really interesting. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things we can talk about, and especially because you talked about certain subjects pertaining to mental health. And that's something that I'm also very, very passionate about. And not only as someone who's navigated through difficult circumstances and had to, you know, contend with certain issues myself, you know, I actually studied psychology and I was working in mental health for a year. So it's something that I do have a little bit of background on. So it's something that, yeah, it's something that I want to discuss more in videos. I want to create like a series of videos that pertains to the spiritual journey and mental health, pretty much, and how you can use certain practices to help you with regards to keeping your mind, body, and spirit healthy, you know, while you're going through certain transitions, dark night of the soul, ascension, that kind of thing. So yeah, maybe we can even do like a live on those kind of topics as well, because I think it'd be really interesting to get into that side of things. But yeah, no, it's been really great having you on this channel. Like, it was so much fun. Like, I didn't even realize it was 2 hours, you know, because I was just so engaged, you know, in the conversation. But I just saw it now, like it's 9 o'clock here, so I was like, wow, okay, it really has been 2 hours. I thought it's Instagram cheating me, but no, it's actually been 2 hours. But yeah, time flies when you're having fun, right?
It does. It really does.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll definitely have to do another live soon. I want to start making this more regular. So that's something I'm going to start putting announcements out for. I didn't get a chance this week because things are just crazy, especially with me resigning. So that's another thing. But
Gotta
yeah,
just go on the downward slope and just rest.
yeah. So yeah, we'll definitely talk and arrange another live very, very soon. And we can discuss some topics. And yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. I'm gonna try and get these up on Instagram. No, Instagram. It is Instagram. YouTube. That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, try and get it on YouTube as well. I know obviously the formatting is different, but I can kind of figure that out in post. That's fine. And yeah, it'd be good to just talk to you some more and about lots of different things and get your insight because yeah, you have a lot to say about these things and it's always nice to have such a fresh and interesting perspective. So thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this with me and to share it with obviously the audience and those who will be viewing this later.
You're welcome, and thank you again. Thank you, all the thank yous. Spreading the love.
Oh, thank you. No, it was a pleasure, and yeah, we'll definitely have to keep in touch. Maybe we can even collaborate further. So let's stay in touch and see what we can do, and shine our little beacons in the world, and do what we came to do, right?
Yes, we have no other choice. The universe is just like, well, you're going down this path anyway.
I know, whether you're kicking and screaming or willful, so it's like, it literally is like that.
You're gonna get dragged either way. Do you want to walk or do you want your ankle?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. That's why now, like, I am just kind of like, okay, I surrender, I'm coming, and I'm just trusting. Trust is a big thing, it's a little bit scary, but you have to, you got to get to this point where you just have to, believe and trust in yourself, the universe, and that it's all going as it's meant to. So it's okay, there's nothing to fear. Easier said than done, but you have to do it.
It's true. It's very true. We all get used to it because you just go through a point where it's just like, okay, what's the worst that has happened to me, and does it amount to what's about to come? And then you have a little bit of leeway room.
Exactly. I think that helps a lot, actually, just being able to rationalize it that way. It's just like, well, you've already been through all this, so, why not, take the plunge and see where it leads to. But, I think also you do, around that time, you get these little synchronistic messages, that's showing you that you are being supported, that, it's okay. You're not going to fall, you're going to be caught. So there's nothing to fear.
Period. And then it just keeps growing and then growing, which is thankfully something that we're all just adapting now. We're just like, yes, more people are coming together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly. And I love that. It's so good to see. So that makes me really optimistic as well. And that's why I'm just like wanting to keep that energy going, while it's there, just keep pumping that positivity out there because we need it, and especially everything that's been going on lately. I feel like, people need to be reminded of that, especially as we start to slowly shift into, I would say, kind of normalcy, but at the same time, things are changing a lot as well. So it's like a new normalcy.
More to come, but just sending protection everywhere. Sending protection.
Yes. Yes, lots of protection. That came up actually. I have this new deck that I brought and I love it. It's called Making Magic, and it's like a little spell deck, and it's like, different cards that comes with different sigils on it. Some of it's like from the Celtic kind of mythology. Some of it's runic, where it comes from like, Scandinavian countries. Some of it is like just general sigils and, alchemical symbols as well. So it's kind of like a mixture from different systems, but primarily I would say, from the Celts, Saxons, and probably I'd say Vikings as well. And yeah, I pulled a card this morning because I pull one every morning to be like, theme of the day, you know, what I'm placing my energy on. And the card that came up today was protection, actually, and the earth sign as well, saying about how using the energies of the earth to ground oneself and to offer support as well. So yeah, it's just funny how that came up because it was so relevant to those energies. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's great. I love the little synchronicities like that. It's just, yeah, it's just little confirmations, you know, just to keep going. You're on track. Keep going.
As long as protection's around you, you can keep going.
Exactly. You know, and yeah, you know, and like I said, I feel like, you know, things are only going to become more and more apparent anyway. I mean, everything's so on the surface now anyway, but I feel like things will become clearer and people will start to feel their way more and get a sense of where they're headed. I feel like people such as ourselves are kind of getting a sense of that now, but there's still the great question, you know, like we were discussing earlier. But I feel like with time it will become apparent, you know, so there's no need to fret or worry. It's just going with it and knowing that clarity is coming, the answers are coming pretty much.
And to the journey away.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, it was really good talking to you, as I said. Really enjoyed it. It was a great live. I've already added the first 2 parts to IGTV, so that should be up there now. I don't know if it takes time to process. I have no idea. I can't remember, but it's on there anyway, so people will be able to view it there also. And yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get it on YouTube so you guys can watch this after the fact. And just want to say again, thank you so much. Just thank you, all the thank yous. It was a lot of fun, and I am getting you back here, definitely, for another discussion. And maybe we can sort something out on YouTube as well. I don't know, is it possible to have a live discussion with the 2 screens?
We're going to figure it out.
We'll figure it out. There's probably people going to be watching this that are like, yes, Brenda, oh no. But, you know, that's kind of like, that's something I haven't explored yet. I'm still getting to grips with YouTube, so I will see. But either way, we'll find a format that works for us both. And yeah, we'll go with that. But yeah, definitely getting you on live somehow again soon. We can definitely do another Instagram live as well. And yeah, just stay in touch. And I hope that, you know, the next coming week is awesome. You know, lots of good vibes, protection, all the good stuff, you know.
Yeah, yes. Thank you so much for having me. The beautiful soul, Empress, all of it. Thank you. Thank you.
No,
I
you're
don't know
welcome.
what else to do. I'm really weird. So I'm just like, hopefully you can get these vibes. Just thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. No, it was great. It was really good. And yeah, for everyone that watched this as well, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. And I have been seeing your comments and the waves and stuff, and I'm sorry I didn't really get to respond. It's just that, you know, I was kind of keeping the conversation alive because we were just like in the zone and there, and you know, but you guys get it anyway. But thank you. Thank you for taking the time to watch it. And yeah, as I said, I will put the links for Nat's channels in a feed post, okay? So look out for the post. I'll also, if I can get this on YouTube, which fingers crossed I should be able to, I'll put the links in the description box as well, so you can go check her out, look at her videos, follow, subscribe, do all of that, send all the love, you know, because she's awesome, so please do that. And yeah, we'll get you back very soon. But for now, have an awesome day.
Thank you so much. Sending the hug. Sending.
So, thank you. And I'm probably going to get some food now. So have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Have a good night. All the
Thank
best
you.
sleeps.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.